I have some sympathy for atheism in many ways, mostly because many religious people have done a dreadful job at explaining things and have alienated generations of smart people. And also because atheists often become that way through curiosity and a desire to have an integrated worldview. On the video that I did recently on the symbolic versus literal interpretation of the Bible, I got a very good and concise comment about atheism and why many people have abandoned religion. So I'm going to read the comment, which is by a user named Amber Trance, and I'm going to try to answer as best as I can. Quote, I am an atheist because my pure and honest desire to understand the universe led me to answers from biology, physics, and other scientific fields. These answers are more sublime and precious than anything I know. I believe religions and symbolism can confer meaning in one's personal subjective life because I've been on that path before. You could say that is enough because all we have in our existence is our subjective point of view, but I believe it's a noble act to care less about that and to desire to know what happens in the universe outside your own personal life. Then how could anyone judge you for being an atheist when science, as imperfect as it is, brought you knowledge about distant stars and galaxies, the small world of atoms, and much more? Mysticism and religion did not enlighten us about matters above subjective and social aspects. Many other things can replace religion, mysticism, and symbolism in creating a stable and moral society. The value that science brought to humanity on the other side is irreplaceable. I will cease being an atheist and become spiritual or whatever, when all these pretty post hoc connections and symbols will make a difference in allowing me to understand the nature of the universe outside my insignificant, tiny life. All right, that's actually pretty good, and I hope I chose a comment that most atheists would find represents a typical journey which would lead one to atheism. And I know it's hard to understand, and it will seem aggravating beyond belief to many atheists at the outset, but so I'm going to try to give an example that will unpack this as much as possible. So I think we can keep going with the mountain. I've talked about mountains before in other talks, but it's such a basic image that it can help us understand many things. Is that as you ascend the mountain, the width of the base is refined. It necessarily gets narrower and narrower as you go higher and higher. But I still haven't shown you how that works. I want to go back and read the comment that I was sent, and hopefully I can show you. So our commentator says, quote, I am an atheist because my pure and honest desire to understand the universe led me to answers from biology, physics, and other scientific fields. These answers are more sublime and precious than anything I know. Notice she says, these answers are more sublime and precious. Now what is that word sublime? It's an interesting word, because something sublime is something which is elevated. What she means is that scientific answers are more precious. She said it. Rarer. Something like the move from the large quantity at the base of the mountain to the rarer and more sought after summit. Now, this is where we need to pay attention. That mysticism and religion did not enlighten us about matters above subjective and social aspects. Now notice again that she uses the word above. Now, does she mean that, for example, that if I had a stack, of scientific data, like a pile of paper, let's say, that I would place it on top of a stack of subjective and social matters? No, obviously not. What she's saying is that there is a hierarchy of value, a mountain of meaning, and scientific knowledge is, in her opinion, closer to heaven, closer to the oneness of the summit. And that's really interesting because the scientific method is, by its own admission, by its own process, a removal of all hierarchies of value. It is the leveling of the world into measurable phenomena, the removal of all meaning. Yet in order to express the superiority of science, our commentator must resort to the same language, the same structure we use. So she is criticizing symbolic language while using the symbolic language to elevate, to magnify, and submit herself to science and its precious, sublime answers. But the language of elevation, of hierarchy, being indeed the manner in which we ascribe value to things, is the religious hierarchy that we find in Dante, or in Jacob's Ladder, or in Moses' ascent of the mountain, the great chain of being, as it has been called. It goes unnoticed, even as it is being used, creating a form of cognitive dissonance, an unconsciousness of language and of one's own embodied human existence. So what is fascinating is that she can use that structure of heaven and hierarchy unconsciously. Exactly because the scientific method does not include it in its worldview, does not take it into consideration how we exist and how we encounter the world.